Hello everyone. Let's start our today's class with the meaning of the word jurisdiction. What do you mean by jurisdiction? Jurisdiction means when someone has legal power or legal authority over an area in which that power can be used, and that area can be defined in terms of geographical boundaries or in terms of certain kinds of subjects. Jurisdiction can also be over a person. And here in this chapter, we'll be talking about the jurisdiction of central and state governments. Now, moving forward, today in the video, we will be talking about features of federalism, and after that we will also be discussing about coming together federations and holding together federations. So if you remember, in the last video we talked about unitary government and we also talked about federal form of government. Federations are opposite of the unitary governments, and under the unitary system, if we talk about, there is only one level of government, or there is the subunits or the subordinate to the central government, or that one level of the government. Now in this unitary form of government, the central government can only pass orders to the provincial or the local government. Shortly, if we talk about, central government has all the authority of passing the orders, but if we talk about, on the other hand, federal form of government, the central government cannot order the state government or the regional government to do something, and in that federal form of government, state government has power of its own. They can take their decisions of their own for the welfare of the people, for the welfare of the society, and they're not even answerable to the central government. Both these governments in the federal form of government, that is the central government and the state government or the regional government, are separately answerable to the people for the decisions they have taken. Now moving forward in the video, we will be talking about the key features of federalism. The first feature is that there are two or more levels of government, or we can also say that there are two or more tiers of the government. That is, if you can see that we have already talked about the two tiers or the two level of government, that is the central government and the state government or the regional government. Now the second feature is that the different tiers or the different levels of government govern the same citizens that are living in that country, but each tier or each level has its own jurisdiction. We talked about the meaning of the word jurisdiction in the starting of this video. That means the area where someone has legal authority upon. So, each level or each tier of the government under the federal form of government govern the same citizens, but they have their own jurisdiction and or the area, we can say, on which they have legal authority upon in specific matters like legislation, taxation and administration. Now the third point is, or the third key feature of federalism is, that the jurisdictions of the respective levels or the tiers of the government are specified in the constitution. It is mentioned in the constitution regarding the jurisdiction of the levels of the government, of the different levels of the government, that is the central or the state or the regional government. It is mentioned in the constitution about their jurisdiction, and so the existence and authority of each tier of the government is constitutionally guaranteed. So their authority, their legal authority over that particular jurisdiction of that particular level of the government is guaranteed constitutionally. Now coming on to the fourth key feature of federalism, that is, the fundamental provisions of the constitution cannot be unilaterally changed by one level of the government. So it is very important point that the fundamental provisions of the constitutions cannot be changed by the decision of any one level of the government. Which means that if any change is required in the fundamental provisions of the constitution, then the consent of both the levels of the government is required for that particular change that needs to be done. Now, coming on to the fifth key feature, the courts have the power to interpret the constitution and the powers of different levels of the government. Very importantly, it is very important to note that courts are very important as they have the power to interpret the constitution and also the powers that the different levels of government are enjoying. Now, the highest court, it actually acts as an umpire. If there is some dispute between the two levels of the government, then the highest court is there which acts as an umpire and it solves the disputes that arise between these different levels of the government. Now, the sixth key feature is that the sources of revenue of each level of the government, they are also clearly mentioned, clearly specified, so that they have their financial autonomy. That is, they have their own sources of revenue from where they can get the revenue from. They have their own sources. Different levels have their own sources from where they get the revenue, and they are also clearly specified so that there is financial independence and they can take their own decisions. Now, coming on to the last key feature of federalism, that is, the federal system has dual objectives. Now, what does it mean? It means that it has dual objectives. By this, they mean that it has to safeguard and promote the unity of the country also, while at the same time, it has also to accommodate regional diversity. So, in one way, it also have to safeguard and promote the unity of the country. It has to bind the people of the country together, and while at the same time, it has to also deal with regional diversity and take different regions together and take decisions accordingly so that the unity of the country is also intact with the regional diversity. Now, therefore, if we talk about, there are two aspects which are very crucial, very important for the institutions and also very important for the practice of federalism, that the governments at different levels should agree to some rules of power sharing, that there should be a understanding between the two levels, between the different levels of the government, and they have to agree to some rules of power sharing, and they should also trust each other and they should abide by its part of the agreement. Now, an ideal federal system should have both the aspects, that is, mutual trust also should be there, and very importantly, there is an agreement to live together. So, the different levels of the government should have mutual trust and they should have an agreement to live together. They should agree to each other on some rules of power sharing and they should also abide by their part of the agreement, and they should, very importantly, should support each other for this federal system to become successful. Now, let's start with the discussion of coming together and holding together federation. So, there is an exact balance of power, that is between the central and the state government, that actually varies from one federation to other. So, the exact balance varies from one federation to another. It may be different in different federations. But this balance actually depends mainly on the historical context in which the federation was actually formed. It totally depends on the formation of that federation. Now, there are two kinds of routes through which federations have been formed. Firstly, the first route involves the independent states that come together on their own to form a bigger unit. Again, I am repeating, the first route is that where there are independent states and with their will they come together on their own and form a bigger unit. By pooling together sovereignty and they retain identity and they can increase their security in this manner. And this type of coming together federations include examples are USA, Switzerland and Australia. Again, I'll repeat, the first route in which the federations are formed are when there are independent states, they come together on their own and form a bigger unit. It is called as coming together federations, and it has examples of USA, Switzerland and Australia. So in the first category of federation, that is the coming together federations, all the constituent states usually they have equal power and they are equally strong. The federal government that is formed by this method, by this route, is also equally strong. Now let's talk about the second route, where a large country decides to divide its power between the constituent state. If you remember, in the first route there is coming together of independent state, and in the second route there is division of power between the constituent states of a large country, right? So in this case, in the second route, a large country decides to divide its power between the constituent states and the national government. And example of this type of federations are India, Spain, Belgium, and this type of federations are called as holding together federations. Now in this second category or this second route, the central government is tend to have more power than the state governments, and very often the different constituent units of this federation, they have unequal powers, because due to various reasons some of the units are granted special powers. So children, that's all for today. We'll come back with the next video with the next topic. Thank you so much.